Chapter 6. The ride back to his place was quiet. Gabe wasn't one who needed a lot of noise in his life. In fact, he enjoyed his solitude and often became overstimulated in crowds. But he had a feeling the bold woman next to him wasn't often quiet, and that felt unnatural. He glanced periodically over to his right as he drove up the mountain, expecting the volcano to blow like Mount Krakatoa at any point. The air was thick with tension. He just knew, that the silence was masking her internal monologue. He could practically see the gears turning in her brain. It was fascinating, really. Her brain never seemed to stop, or it certainly hadn't in the brief time since he'd met her. The suspense was killing him, so he finally took a deep breath and risked speaking. Imogen visibly tensed when he opened his mouth, but relaxed when she realized the topic of conversation. "How old is Cookie? She is incredibly sweet." "Thanks. She's 4, I think. I rescued her, but no one could give me a birth date, so we're all just guessing." "We?" "The rescue, the foster, the veterinarian. I've decided to celebrate her birthday on her gotcha day, February 14th. "Valentine's Day? That is so sweet. What a great love story." Imogen smiled at him for the first time. "I think so. She's a special girl. I don't remember what life was like before her." "I love that. She's lucky to have such a good home. Not all pit bulls are lucky that way." "I've always loved pit bulls. When I was a kid, I was told they were dangerous, but my neighbor had one and he was the most loving dog I'd ever met. I knew that I wanted one myself, and am so grateful to have her. She's never met a stranger." She fondly stroked Cookie's head as the dog rested it on her leg. "I think she chose you as much as you chose her." Gabe risked a glance out of the corner of his eye. He knew the dark and winding road well. Still, it was rut season and deer tended to dart into traffic, something his new neighbor had already learned the hard way. Another small smile. I guess they just had to stick to safe topics like her dog. He could do that to keep the peace. "How did you meet?" "I saw her on a Facebook post. The owners thought she was too high-strung and gave her up. But I've never had a dog before and I work weird hours, so it wasn't fair. A few weeks later, I got a temp job at a local dog rescue, and she was there. The staff let her run around because she was so people and dog-friendly. I was intimidated by her size, but she wouldn't stop following me around. I like to say she convinced me to be hers." "That's sweet." Imogen frowned at his tone. When Gabe glanced over, he laughed out loud. "Why is that a bad thing?" Gabe asked. She didn't like that everything she thought showed on her face. Just once, Imogen wished for a poker face of some kind. This guy was way too observant. "I'm not sweet. She needed a home and I had one for her. It just happened to work out." "Okay," Gabe replied, giving her an out. He turned his attention to the smiling dog at her feet. "Someone is irresistible and deserves the best, doesn't she?" Cookie licked his hand in thanks, then closed her eyes for a little snooze. The truck went silent as Gabe pulled down his driveway. She focused on where she was, as much as she could with the headache pounding behind her eyes. While her aunt vouched for him and he seemed relatively nice, this could be a misery situation, and she didn't want to be stranded. The driveway was bordered on either side with thick tree cover, the foliage starting to turn in beautiful yellow and orange. They proceeded over a small stone bridge that crossed a wide, flowing creek. When they entered the clearing, Imogen couldn't help the small gasp that left her lips. If Gabe noticed, he didn't remark. He slowed to pull in front of the large log cabin, if one could call it that. It must be at least 2,500 square feet. It sprawled beautifully in the clearing, with a terrace placed to watch the sunset with a glass of wine or whiskey over the crest of the mountain range to the west. Within that view was a small barn, discreetly set among the tree line, and paddocks containing animals of different sizes. It was a picture of idyllic peace. Stunning, really, if you went for that sort of thing. Imogen was more a Victorian near-the-beach kind of girl. As a beach lover, she appreciated nature, and the mountains held their own allure. Gabe broke the silence first as he came around to open her door, flourishing in a grand bow as Cookie hopped out. He stood up laughing as she jumped up to put both front paws on his chest. "Welcome to my home. My property is next to your aunt's." he said as he pointed to the north, where thick woods obscured any view of the house. There is a deer path that leads along the creek toward her house once you're feeling better. It's much quicker than trying to escape via the road. Escape? Imogen snorted. This guy had some nerve. She obviously didn't want to be here, but it's not like she was going to run off into the woods with a concussion and no knowledge of where she was. Did he think she was an idiot? Gabe laughed at her scowl. She was so entertaining, and she didn't even realize it. Every thought just sat there on her face for the world to see. He didn't give her a chance to retort, but simply started walking. Come on. Chili is on, and I bet you two are hungry. Cookie took off like a shot into the house. She couldn't think of it as a cabin since it was so sprawling, so Imogen mentally shrugged and followed her gambling dog. Frankly, all she needed was a good sleep. She just wanted this day to be over. When she walked in, the smell assaulted her nostrils and her stomach growled. Okay, it would probably be smart to have a meal first and get her bearings. She followed Gabe into the kitchen and practically drooled at the size of it. This was the kitchen of someone who liked to cook. Her own small galley kitchen was used to house leftover takeout orders she would never actually eat and heat up macaroni and cheese, the one thing she knew how to or could be bothered to cook. This was a room meant to be used. Wood cabinets, the color of pine, enveloped the space and overlooked a gorgeous center island. She didn't know much about appliances, but they were stainless steel, and the stovetop, where the amazing smell originated, looked like it cost more than her annual salary. Well, when she did have a salary, that is. Her new neighbor obviously knew his way around and began to remove bowls and fill them with the chili. Her curiosity got the better of her. Is your wife going to be joining us? He whipped around, ladle overflowing with chili that sprayed across the floor, not noticing when Cookie greedily lapped it up. Wife? Imogen shrugged. Sure, or housekeeper? I can already tell I'm going to love the food. I just want to know who to thank. Well, you can thank me then. Gabe set the bowls out on the table. She followed behind him and sat when he indicated. I like to cook. I have a stressful job, so it helps me to focus on something else for a bit. Plus, I like food. Imogen began shoveling the chili into her mouth, closing her eyes with such an extreme look on her face, he had trouble not laughing. Clearly, you like food too. Do you cook? Imogen snorted, accidentally spraying some chili from her bowl to her shirt. Oh well, it was ruined anyway. I love food, but yeah, cooking is not my thing. I guess out here I'll have to figure something out, since I can't imagine delivery is an option. You can drive into town and pick up food, but by the time you get back it will be cold, so it's pointless. I'll put some simple meals together and bring them over so you can put them in your freezer. Make it easy. Otherwise, you can always go to the tavern in the village. It's small, but does a brisk local business. You don't need to make me food, you don't even know me. But thanks for the offer. I'll be fine with some canned soup, and I can make a mean omelet. Gabe wrinkled his nose. That doesn't sound healthy. Still, it's all good. Let me know if you get overwhelmed when Joe gets back, and I am happy to help. I must cook anyway, and making dinner for one is just as easy as making it for 3. I guess if you put it like that. And if you really did make this chili, then you're pretty good. But only if it's not inconvenient. I'll figure out a way to return the favor. Don't worry about it. That's what friends are for. Are we friends? We just met. You don't even know me. Yet, Imogen. I don't really know you yet.